We're living it.
Shoot, man.
What's up, Gumby?
What's up, Gumby? So he's trying to get it going.
Yeah.
I talked to Walter.
He don't have his camera, huh?
Walter actually gave me all the info to get on this. So I think he's here.
I see Walt's name on there. I just his camera's not on, but
this is the first time I've used it, so I don't even know how to check who's in the.
I don't even know either. I see Gumby though. You see Gumby, right?
I saw his
here,
name
guys.
pop up.
I see Gumby right now.
Oh, let me check my text real quick.
Oh. Hey, Gumby.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Oh, man, hanging in there just like everybody else.
Pretty crazy right now.
Crazy. Especially I was just talking with Eric, like, you know, especially my type of work too. It's like small business, all about meetings, and it's like everything's, I got to hang on. I just got to hang on. And I know it's going to come back at some point for me, for my type of work. Whenever it does flatten back out and come back around, the meetings are going to be booming. But that's the bright side for me. I just got to hang on and look on the bright side. But
yeah,
luckily my wife's remote and she can work remote and get a paycheck. So we're okay for now, but it's hurting, definitely hurting.
Yeah, no doubt.
I can talk to you offline about it, but like, cause you're a San Jose based business technically, right?
Hold on, Gumby, your volume's low. Let me see I don't know how to work this. Let's see.
It could be me too. I'm trying to
there.
this home
Yeah,
setup right now. I have a microphone and all that.
It's all good.
But there are a lot of, we can talk offline. There are actually a lot of like disaster relief and small business type stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Really low interest loans and things like that. So I'm investigating all of that right now. Been in touch with small business. Great.
Did you do this with him?
Yeah.
Assuming like, you know, we're back to normal and nobody knows, like, you know, like we're back to normal. We can go back to work on April 7th. We'll be fine. Longer than that,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we can only make so many preparations, you know what I mean? We stock up only so much, and then the timetable extends, and you're like, oh.
Man, I got kind of lucky because before they closed my kid's school, which was on, so I was rolling up. So Friday was my last class at Heroes, right? We're rolling on Friday. I was just talking with Bobby. I'm like, man, they haven't closed my kid's school yet, blah, blah, blah. Literally, right? I got a call in the middle of like towards halfway, like around 12:30 in the middle of our rolls saying, hey, all our kids' schools got closed. So me and my wife went to the store, got 2 basketfuls of like food and all that and then sure enough, man, over the weekend, it just got worse and worse. So luckily we stocked up on some food and got a little jump on it early on Friday because our markets are cleared out, man, over on this end.
Same here. Yeah. Stores are empty. Yeah. It's a ghost town over. Like I was getting off the freeway yesterday and right there at 85 and Almaden Expressway, there's literally the Costco parking lot was a ghost town.
Crazy.
Yeah, surreal for sure.
We're all gonna make it through though.
Oh, no doubt.
Things will look fine eventually. Strange times for sure though.
Definitely.
How are you holding up, Gumby? I only have 45 minutes on this Zoom right now. Like I actually, you know, Zoom is actually located here in downtown San Jose, like, you know, about a mile away from the academy. So I actually have a virtual meeting scheduled with somebody from Zoom to see about what's the best way or trying to figure out a better solution for virtual classes is the best way to do here. So we'll be doing that pretty soon or something better about that. But in the meantime, I just got this free account trying to figure out what's the best possible solution. And coincidentally, I said I was going to live stream some classes or release some techniques. But my internet connection actually I have it at the East Side location, but my internet connection is actually a new internet connection that actually doesn't flake out every 5 minutes is going to be installed tomorrow at the downtown location. So I'll probably use that opportunity to film some solar stuff.
I don't know how this Zoom thing works, but my wife just told me if you need Zoom meetings, she can get you free Zoom meetings.
I can set up.
She can set it up because she uses it through her work or whatever. I don't know how it all works, but she just kind of whispered that through my ears. If it comes down to it, just let me know. She can set it up for us.
And I'm trying to figure out something that would be like in the meantime useful for people. Like I could have gone and shot anything, and I've been planning on shooting some instructionals for a while, but I think right now, like I'm posting up the links on the Facebook page, there's actually a lot of really good solo information out there, or a lot of drills. A lot of people are opening up their their online training for free. John Donaher released a really good solo drill thing that I think everybody should check out.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraging people to check that out, and I'll repost the links up on everything that I have. I'll probably write up an article about that pretty soon. And then
he also has.
I haven't shot any like instructional video recently. I have like in my office, I have about 3,000 or 4,000 hours worth of competition footage that nobody's ever seen or like haven't been seen for years. So I'm posting up the links on the page. Like I'm posting up a couple of hours of footage every day that just some really old school footage that I think is worth checking out. So next time I hold one of these meetings, I'll probably do these on a regular basis. Maybe we'll pick a video that I think is interesting, or maybe you think is interesting, and then we'll go ahead and kind of dissect it and see, like, we can definitely discuss some competition and things like that.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So there's ways of keeping busy and the mind sharp and the body sharp too, between now and whenever we're back on the mat, I guess.
Not soon enough.
We lied.
One other thing that I wanted to share with folks that, like, I actually hadn't gotten a lot of feedback when I initially posted this up, but there is a workbook that I put up on the fundamental levels that I encourage everybody here to, like, kind of download, check out. It's a very simple kind of worksheet that can kind of help map out what your fundamental knowledge is and where your game is at and what you might need to work on or what you want to think about working on. Again, I'll post the link again on the Facebook page and then go from there. But has anybody actually looked at that, or does anybody have any questions about it?
I kind of filled it out, but
I finished mine yesterday.
Did you? I did mine, but I don't know how it's I literally did it like 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. I just wanted to kind of give some instructions on that. And then also with the Zoom thing, like, you know, kind of keep busy because I'm quarantined. I'm happy to, like, kind of schedule some time on an individual basis and talk to folks during this time. But the idea on that is like, you know, the hardest thing I think for a lot of people on that sheet to start off with is, like, some things some things are obvious. Like I always say, like mount escapes, for example, is a pretty obvious 1-2 on that. You have your UPAs and you have your elbow escapes. And 99% of folks, even at the high level, those are your 2 escapes that you're going to get there. And some of them are a lot less obvious. Like, hey, what are my moves from closed guard? There's about not an infinite amount of them, but there's a lot of different ones.
Each A is one sound.
And the idea is to be able to narrow it down to 1 or 2 or to 2 moves, hopefully complementary to each other.
It sounds like a Z guy.
And then kind of go ahead and work on that as your A and B game. And it gives us 2 opportunities or 2 options if you can kind of map things out that way. Number 1, you can kind of go, like, when you actually fill this out, be honest with yourself about it. Like, you know, don't fill out the 2 moves. Fill out the 2 moves that you think that you have, not the ones that you hope to have. So in this way, you can kind of set up, hey, I'm really strong in this area, and I'm good with this. Maybe I can explore some things on this area, but I'm really weak in this particular area. And it's like, I need some help on this, or I need to get some more resources and things like that. So I think that's really important, to be honest with yourself about that. The second thing about that also is, when we set that up, is in some places, I know you're going to have more than one answer on this stuff in this section right here, though. I'll have 4 or 5 things that I could do right there. Honestly, keep it to 2 for right now. And the reason why you want to keep 2 to start off with is because when in times of stress, you know, you don't want to have to go through 5 options in your head in this particular situation. You want 2 options that are complementary to each other and you can go quickly back and forth to. You know, eventually, even the high level guys, you know, I still have, if you really stress me out, when I say stress, like, you know, tough matchups and whatnot, I'm going to have one or two moves that I'm always going to go back to my plan A game right there. You know, when I'm playing around for fun, or like I'm training, I'm working through things, I do have a C through Z game, or I have plenty of other techniques. But in times of stress, I only have like one or two that I'm going to go ahead and do.
Ran into it with Amia.
So there's another set, which we'll get to at some point in this. Like I have other worksheets that are coming out. So how to go ahead and train your other game, or how to kind of bring things up so you have an A game or a B game, or how to swap things out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys hear that other conversation going on, or is it just me?
It's definitely not just you.
Oh,
I
okay.
see how many people we have on
I
here.
tested it and it kept doing that.
Quite a few people on here
you
right
can-
now. So
I think you can mute it. I think you can mute
Yeah.
it, Gumby.
You can mute it. Just double tap your own screen and then press mute.
we'll tack
I mean,
mine.
we can only mute ourselves, right? We can't mute other.
No.
I might have
Just ourselves, I think.
No, I just hear somebody else's combo.
Gumby, you can mute everyone because you're the host. And then if you're not
I mean,
talking,
the reason that I need to be on it
yourself,
and others
like,
is so that we
best practice, and the person's screen lights up. So it's Maggie who's talking.
I
That's where
can gather overall how many webinars we had, how many attendees and stuff.
All
but I
right, I'm
can't
gonna
gather
try mute my audio. That doesn't
information
seem
about anything else unless
there.
I'm an organizer and somebody asked me for an ad hoc report. I'm kind of like
Maggie.
out
no,
there.
Gumby, click on participants. If you have a screen on the bottom, there's like a little column on the side,
Oh, I see.
and then you
So I
can
can
mute
figure out
it.
which ones to mute.
Yeah.
Oh,
So we have a stop that
Okay.
because person speaking pops up on everybody's screen.
I think I
I think
only
you
need
got
to mute one person for right now.
Yeah, I think you got it.
Maybe they went into the wrong conversation or something like that, which is fine. Oh well, I'm gonna repeat some of this stuff in a bit because I'm seeing more and more people entering. We got 10 people on this right now. I got more people muted right now. You can mute yourself on this. But again, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions about like the fundamentals workbook, any suggestions about that, anything that I can help you out with on that. Don't all speak at once.
Just got back in. What did you say?
No, if anybody had any questions about the fundamentals workbook, if anybody had any problems filling it out.
I mean, honestly, I'm just having trouble well, I wouldn't say trouble. I'm just having trouble deciding on exactly what I want to put down for each section. I feel like I'm kind of second guessing how my skill level at certain different parts. But I don't quite think I'm having like trouble doing it. I just haven't decided exactly what I want to write down for each opening.
Yeah, and what my suggestion on this is, don't think super hard about it right there. Like if it comes easily, obviously that's the thing that has to put on. It's okay to leave slots in that blank because that will tell you, it's like, ooh, I have a deficiency here. I don't really know what I'm doing. And that will give myself or any other coaches that are gonna work with you on this, like, okay, like we can definitely address this issue right now.
Okay, all right. That's what I'll look at it then.
You know, tentative plans, actually they've been tentative plans for a while now. They got nothing but time. A couple of other things that will happen is I'll come up with like, okay, so like you have more than 2 moves, how you narrow those moves down to your A game, and also how do you kind of build up, you know, build up the moves that you have, so like you have a larger arsenal. Like, you know, right now, like I said, like at a fundamental beginning, like I said, even at my level, when stressed on like a situation, but there's things I want to try, or there's sometimes I learn something and it moves up the list of priorities. So there's ways of going about doing that. So the more feedback I get on the fundamental workbook as it is right now, the more I'll know how to structure phase 2 and then an eventual phase 3 on this also. Phase 3 is going to be kind of situational mapping development on there. We start off from a closed guard. What do I do from a closed guard? It's not just the move, but it's also the reaction, how my opponent moves at that point. You know, am I forced to open up the guard? Is my opponent larger than myself? Well, like, you know, maybe I can do a spider guard, or maybe I should do a butterfly guard. I've always said that I'm not smart enough to have the ability to think 10 moves ahead of anybody. Like anybody says like, oh, that black belt, like I've heard that a lot. Maybe none of you have said that. It's like, ah, that black belt thought 10 moves ahead of me. It's like, I'm clearly not that smart. The best thing I have is the ability to stay in the same place, or like to be very acutely aware of what my situation is in any given time. And I can very quickly make an adjustment. And having certain things mapped out in your head beforehand will definitely help you out on that. So that's coming up pretty soon. Like I said, I've got like time to write the stuff up finally, and I'm going to put that out. But what I'll do actually for those of you who are on this thing is like I can schedule individual Zooms on this later on. So if anybody wants to afterwards kind of call me and schedule like a meeting or something like that to go through your own individual workbook right there, I'm happy to do that. This is more obviously the general type meeting and stuff. So, you know, especially in the next 3 weeks when we don't have, when we definitely can't be on the mat, we'll go ahead and do that. Number 2 thing I wanted to discuss, for those of you who are just joining us, is I've resisted, or I haven't, and there's a laundry list of reasons, of doing like kind of individual classes at home or like filming anything yet. Although that's definitely in the plans. I've definitely talked to Trevor and Eastside particularly on what we're going to do. Eventually I was going to put up the whole or film the whole fundamental cycle. There are a lot of good resources if you're fiending for training at home of what to do, like solo drills. If you go to BJJ Fanatics, John Donaher has released a very excellent free download on how to train at home. Or solo drills. A number of other online sites have given out free memberships for the next 30 days. I know Kyotera Online has done that. Henzo Gracie's website is free for the next 30 days. A lot of great information on both of those. Digijitsu, I think, is releasing free instructionals. And one other, like I'm drawing a blank on it right now. Again, I'm going to send out
there's also
through all our communication sources, send out every resource I can think of free training.
Bernardo Faria on BJJ Fanatics. He's giving that one free video that's like regular $77 or $100 or whatever.
Yeah.
I downloaded one, so it's cool, kind of cool.
Which one did you download out of curiosity?
I downloaded high percentage submissions
from
Bernardo Faria.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a former absolute champion and a really good instructor. So I'll be 100% honest. I very rarely watch instructional videos anymore. Just because in my free time, I have watched and I've produced a lot of them before, but like I'm not as up to date on some of these instructionals as I'd like to be. I have a habit of watching really bad instructionals, actually, is my hobby. Like any of those no-touch death type things, or anytime you see stuff on like McDojo sites, I'm obsessed with watching that type of stuff, to be honest with you. Stuff that I know that wouldn't.
Where can we find that?
Yeah, it's way more fun to watch those. Also, I'll invite you that if you look on both the Heroes website, Heroes YouTube channel and the Gumby OTM channel, I'm posting up a ton of ton of competition footage. Like I released, what did I release today? Oh, Legardo in action. Legardo is a really high level competitor out of the 2000s who actually had Hodgkin's disease. And he came back from that and he still successfully competed after that. So I thought that was, especially in this time, a really good guy and a real inspirational person to put up. He was a favorite of ours even before he had he got that diagnosis. I put up the Brasileiros from '96, like one of the first IBJJF championships. Definitely check that out. For those of you that did the advanced classes a couple of weeks ago, I talk about Holetta all the time. and particularly how dangerous his version of the guard is. And you can see a version of why his guard is so dangerous in that video. And plus, I had another guy that I talk about, Nino Schembre, my all-time, like another one of my all-time heroes. When I was coming up, like Nino was the man. You can see him winning the absolute title in that particular video, which I thought was cool. And just to tell you how scary Nino is, Nino's my size, a little bit heavier than there. He was known for knocking out Sakuraba. Bobby will tell you this. Nino made Bobby tap out from side control pressure. Yeah, Nino's game is insane. And then like I have a couple of other videos that I'm basically processing on my computer right now. It takes time. I can't just upload it directly and go over there. Like these are huge files that I'm putting up. I got the Mundials, the World Championships from '96 that's coming up tomorrow, and you can't see it for like unless I move the camera around. I have about 3,000 hours worth of competition footage from the late '90s, early 2000s. Sitting in my office behind me right now that I got to organize and sort out. So that's what I had to say for right now. The Zoom thing is a little bit new to me. I'm going to throw it over to you though. It's like, does anybody have any questions about your training in jiu-jitsu, the history of jiu-jitsu? Not to brag, I've been around for a long time and I've worked with a lot of different people. So this is your private audience or semi-private or 9-person audience to go ahead and ask me anything about jiu-jitsu that you want.
I had a question.
Technique-wise. Sean?
What's the best way to like watch the competition footage and learn, like, what do you look for or what are you watching for? What notes should you take when you watch these videos?
You know, the funny thing is it's like, a little bit of an old fart story on this right now, but like when I say I don't really watch as much instructional video, like I watched a lot of competition footage back in the day. And it was mainly because there was no instructional video when I started training, or there was very, very limited resources on that. And this might still be true, but way back in the day, like people wouldn't necessarily put up their best moves on the instructional videos. They'll put out instructional videos because it was a good way to make money. Like jiu-jitsu is much more of an unknown. But if you're still an active competitor, it's like, are you going to put your best game out there? That might still be true right now. Like the people kind of like have intentionally left stuff out or have put misleading things in instructionals from back in the day because they're still using that stuff. But competition footage doesn't lie. Like, like you can't lie about like your A game or your best thing or what works or doesn't work because you're going to use it in your competition and it's going to work or it's not going to work right there. You're going to get a real clear sense of that. So my advice on that is like this, like number one, watch high level competitors go at it. Like a lot of times I've had students come up to me like, oh, I watched 2 white belts go and I got a sense of that. And that's a real false sense of security on there. Like nothing against any white belts or lower level practitioner at this point. But you also have to realize if something's working simply because they don't know why it worked. Or it's 2 people that don't know the defenses or et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of kind of reasons on that one right there. So I'll watch video of all levels, but in terms of learning, you don't learn a lot unless you're watching some of the higher level guys go at it. And I'm not saying that it necessarily just has to be black belts all the time. It just has to be somebody that knows what they're doing. There's a high level person going at it. So that's the number one thing I look for is like, does that competition footage, is it representative of somebody that actually knows what they're doing? And are they going against somebody that knows what they're doing? Okay, that's number one thing I would point out. Number 2 thing I would point out is that if you're actually trying to learn something from an individual or somebody out there, I would suggest finding somebody that's similar to the game you're trying to play. Okay, there's a lot of wonderful jiu-jitsu players out there. Jiu-jitsu is such a diverse art that you can play a bunch of different ways. So you kind of have to know your own style first, how you tend to play, like what you're seeking, which is why I encourage everybody to kind of fill out that fundamental sheet. And then from there, you can go ahead and kind of pick a couple of competitors to emulate. Like, hey, this would work really well for me. You know, a really good example of this is like Eddie Bravo, for example. Great guy, love the guy to death. There's a certain amount of flexibility that needs to be played in order to work that rubber guard, okay? And some of the more advanced stuff that he does. If you don't have that level of flexibility, there's not a good point in playing that game, okay? And it's not always based on body type, but that's a pretty extreme example of you have to have a certain level of flexibility, you have to have a certain level of body mechanics and awareness to be able to pull off this, some of the stuff. You know, a guy like Hodger Gracie in theory is 100% fundamentals and basics. There's nothing that Hodger does that in theory that you and I or any person that has 2 arms and 2 legs couldn't do. However, people like negate the fact that Hodger's 6'4" and he's crazy strong. Like his strength level is never mentioned, but Hodger's one of the strongest guys out there, absolutely, for sure. But in theory, everybody should be able to work his basic techniques. But I would say, like, based on like who you figure your style is, or what your own personal style is, if you want to learn, then figure out a couple of competitors to go ahead and emulate. It's like, hey, this is what I want to try out. This guy, let me see what this person does. And again, once you've established your own style, if you're not as familiar with the competition scene, I can definitely help you and say like, hey, you should definitely check out this person. This is what he does, and this is what his philosophies and mindset are behind this. So that would be number 2. Number 3, when you watch the footage, I look for specific scenarios, and I look for like kind of questions to come up. Okay, how does this particular person respond to this situation I'm having trouble with? Okay, and I'll actually isolate that particular section and rewatch that a bunch of times. As a matter of fact, like one of my first projects was on the mat like 15, 20 years ago, was taking a bit of that footage that I was watching, or taking that kind of problem, and I would just rewind and loop that part over and over again. In fact, we had a whole DVD series, both with On the Mat and then Mark Lehman, who was like one of the premier coaches, one of the top American guys at the time, would just take that footage and he would take that same like 20, 30-second clip, and he would just go over that 34, like, you know, 3 or 4 times on the video and just watch it over and over again until it was burned into your head. So you look over there and you not only see like the big moves of how they're doing it right there, okay, but the little details, okay? And that's brings me to my next point. I've lost the number on that. What we're at 4 is sometimes 4, good. So sometimes it's look for the subtle details on what they're doing. Look for the big details, actually would be number 4, how they're moving, like what's the big basics, what's the fundamental takeaway that I have understanding on this, like how they're connected to the ground, how they're connected to their opponent, like which way they're shifting. Like almost every good valid technique is going to have some basis in a very kind of strong fundamental that way. And fundamentals, like at a base level that you should, if not understand, have been exposed to already. So like, oh, I'm seeing how they move their hips this way. I'm seeing how they create distance this way. I'm seeing how they play the angle, how they break down the posture, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So look for that. Look for that basic fundamental and how you can apply that to your own game first, how that makes sense to you. So like sometimes when you watch these folks, so like when you watch higher level competitors, you get these light bulb moments like, oh, like, you know, it worked because the way they controlled that posture. Real good example I always point out is again from the posture right there. Like you can watch any level of competitor in this actual or any level of match, that if you have like somebody starts off from the guard, watch the posture of the person on top. I always say, like, if the posture of the person on top, they seem rock solid, if they're very difficult to move, if they seem like they're sure of themselves, they're probably going to be winning the match at that point. On the other hand, look for them if they're frustrated, if they're falling over, if they look like marionettes without the strings and they're moving around that way, then they might be in trouble at that point. Like, you know, the person on the bottom is probably dominating that situation. There's also kind of a side note on there. I look at other visual clues to see like if you can't tell outright who's the one that looks like they're dominating, then there's other tells you look at, like their faces, their eyes, like the way they're breathing. You might have noticed that their mouth was closed in the beginning of the match and it's open. That's usually an indication that somebody's tired. Maybe they're moving faster than they were before because there's a sense of desperation on that. But I look for those things, like who's winning, who's accomplishing what they want to do in that particular situation. How's the person you're watching, how are they able to accomplish that? And then the last thing I look at, again, totally lost track of the numbers, is the small details on that. 5. Thank you, Sean. The small details, like what are the little details on this that makes them more effective or not effective on this? Sometimes it's their grip. Is their hand turned this way or that way right there, or how they're connected to the ground, or where their foot goes, or like maybe they had a different combination than you happen to be thinking of. Sometimes it's as subtle as that, like what variation of the mount are they going after a cross collar choke from, and then you can go ahead and from there say like, hey, that's a great detail. Like sometimes it works out this way. That's a great detail. I've never thought about that before. I can incorporate in that in my game. Hey, that's a great detail, but that's not going to work for me because that's not close to my body type. Although if you did your homework, if you're studying it this well, you should have somebody that you should be emulating or going after somebody that's closer to your body type. Or it's like, hey, that's a detail right there, but that's not going to work for me, or that's not an important detail. And not every detail is important, or not every detail is going to be as important to you. Okay. Yeah. So once I went ahead and collected all that information, when I watched the competition footage, once I've seen all that, then I kind of go back to the lab from a training standpoint. Like, I want to try out this technique, and I'll go ahead and work it out on a non-resistance level. And then I'll try out that technique on somebody, or I'll put myself in the situation and I'll try out that technique on somebody that I probably know I can do it on. Like somebody, it's, there's a saying, you need people at a lower level to train with sometimes, okay, to try stuff out. Then I'll try it somebody, well, at this point, at a close level to myself. It's like, okay, now I'll go ahead and try out this technique when I'm really need to see if it works. Like I've always said, like, if I learn a new technique, the first person I'm not going to try it out on one of the black belts the first time. It's like, when I'm rolling with one of the lower belts, I'll try it out on them a little bit first and then play around with it and see what's that. And I'll repeat this to finish answering the question more than anything else. The process is more important than the results a lot of times. When training is training, the process is more important than the results. A lot of times people I see people treating the training like it's the last round of the world championships and I'm just going to go hard and not fight off of everything. You will hit a definite ceiling in your training at some point if you do that. You got to put yourself in different situations. You got to try stuff out. You got to treat, there's a time and place for it. There's times when I'm training that I just want to go after the person, but most of the time training's training. It's to get us better for a different situation. And does that start to answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. Thank you. I took a ton of notes.
Long answers for a simple question.
5 points. Very good. I like it. Thank you.
Cool. Since you wrote it down, since I came that off the top of my head, maybe you can condense it and share it with other folks. Cool.
Yeah, I'll type it out and see if I can get that to you.
Cool. And post it on Facebook and share it and figure out something to do with it. Like I said, you got me right now, like Zoom, like I just got a message that I can talk as long as I want to on this. Like ordinarily the free account of Zoom only goes for 40 minutes, but they're like, something just popped up. So I'm happy to talk or answer any questions anybody has as long as I got no place to go today. So, or anything else going on.
I don't want to hog it, but I had another question based on what you were talking about. Sure. But I don't want to hog the question line.
Well, you're the next one to ask. So like, we'll go through that one right now, especially it's off of the same thing.
You talked about like different styles. Would you say that, I think I asked this question before, but I didn't write it down, so I forgot it. But would you say there's like different archetypes of styles? And if so, what would you call them and how would you explain them?
that answer shifted over the years. And I looked at this initially not so much as a coach, but as a competitor and as a matchmaker. Like people, I don't know if many of you realize, I actually did a lot of matchmaking for various tournaments, all the way up and including to ADCC, believe it or not. I actually got people in that over the years. So I've always kind of broken down jiu-jitsu. My initial reactions, I broke it down into 4 pretty distinct styles. The way that I looked at it. And then there's subsets off of that style. But basically the 4 styles were like really old school, whereas in the sense that, and this is where I kind of came from, that jiu-jitsu had to work in a bunch of different situations, including, I'm not going to call it MMA because that's wasn't what I had at that point, but Vale Tudo self-defense. Like, would this work in a fight? Would this get you killed in a fight? It was essentially what I was looking at to start off with. So that was number 1. Okay, number 2, there's a style, and it's become much more broad right now, but very basically, with the rise of sports jiu-jitsu over the last 24 years, there's a lot of techniques that are very effective in sports jiu-jitsu, but will get you killed in a street fight. I.e., I wouldn't pull guard or spider guard if I was getting attacked. Not to say that you shouldn't pursue or learn that. It's just this. If you're not worried about getting punched or kicked in the face, there's certain other things you get to do. So you see a lot of the sport game, I think, evolve from that. And like I said, because it's so evolved and it's been running for 20 years, I think you can divide up different lines on that. The 3rd style I had on that was people that kind of have their plan A and plan B, and they're very kind of, they're very hard to deal with because they have a lot of techniques in their arsenal, and as soon as one technique comes up, or as soon as you have one action against them, they would react and move a different way. They play the percentage game a lot, whereas the first 2 styles, or particularly the first style, they might have less options, but their options are way harder to stop. Okay, I always use an example of, like, I was fortunate enough when I came up starting jiu-jitsu. Again, like, Ralph Gracie's 96 was just full of killers. Like, some of the best guys in the world trained there at that point. Definitely was, most people will say it was the toughest room in the United States. The Cameron brothers, Cameron Earl, BJ Penn, I can go on and on and on. Sean Shelby, the matchmaker of the UFC, was one of my original training partners. The list goes on and on of, like, killers that were in there. But, like, in particular, I always looked at Dave Camarillo and Cam Earl were probably like the 2 best Americans, or 2 of the best Americans at that time. Everybody feared them, but their games couldn't have been more different in the sense that, and both of them wiped the floor with me most of my career. But Dave had a lot of options. Like, if you've ever studied or know anything about the guerrilla system, they're like, movement A, movement B. They do a lot of things to create confusion. The second that you catch on to there, like, we'll switch to something else. Essentially, if I tried to play speed for speed or match for match against Dave, there was no way I was ever going to beat him. He was always going to be 1 step ahead of me. Whereas, like, Cameron was hellaciously strong for his size. Like, he'd be, like, especially for the division he fought. And, Cameron, I talked about that guy that, he's beaten Marcelo Garcia 2 out of 3 times. He had a lot less options, but the options he had, you could not stop. Like, once he decided to do something like that hook killing pass we were discussing, like, last week, that was his specialty, right? Once he latched that on you, you had no way of stopping, essentially. If I tried to go ahead and be slow and methodical against that dude, I would get run over like a freight train. So what I learned pretty quickly was I had to play my game, and I had to figure that out. So I don't make radical adjustments, but you have to learn how to adapt your game to different situations. Okay. And broadly, it's like, okay, less moves, but you can't stop them. A Hadra Grace would be in that category. I'm trying to think of who else, but again, my competition knowledge is a little bit lower. Or, or is that person that has like a bunch of different moves and you can't react too well to it. Believe it or not, Higan Machado, a lot of people consider one of the greatest of all times, has that style of game, and he explains and teaches things in that way. And then I had a 4th category. Like, believe it or not, Batata was really hard to categorize. Like, rather than focusing and having Matata had this weird thing that, or that type of style, that he would focus on one thing, but he would do that so well that it made you forget about everything else. It's almost like Aikido. Like if you ever rolled with Matata, he was so good at going after your neck that if you didn't think about defending your neck the whole time, you were going to be in trouble. And the second you spent all that time defending your neck because you had to, he was going to do something else. Actually, Dean Lister would be another good example of this. And in his own words, like everybody fears Dean Lister for the leg attacks, but he said like his leg attacks are only good in conjunction with his guard passing. Like everybody was so afraid of his leg attacks, they would let him pass his guard. And the second you start letting him pass your guard, or you defend your guard really vigorously, he was going to take your leg off. So those are the initial styles that I looked at. Then there's other things that I look at also in terms of, I don't want to like say that anybody's aggressive or defensive. I prefer the word sharp. That was a quote from a friend of mine, Henry Akins. Like I'm willing to kind of adapt to whatever situation I'm at. But there are some guys that do better when they're being more aggressive and pushing forward. And there's some guys that are better counter fighters. Marcelo Garcia, I keep talking about, is more of a counter fighter. He's good enough that he can do both, but at the highest levels, you'll see that he waits for his opponent to make the first move. And whatever motion you make, whatever movement you make against him is essentially going to be the wrong move. He's going to go ahead and counter you and do something bad to you. If you look at his competition career, you'll see like his arm drags became his biggest weapon. Arm drags are essentially counterattacks. Like you wait for somebody to come after you aggressively and you go from there. So you have to, so that's another thing that I always kind of look for is the person that goes through that. There's a few other things. Does somebody prefer pressure or movement? I guess that goes back to my first kind of statements. What else do I look for in that? Those are all kind of psychological type things. Those are more inherent things. I should point out when somebody has a style, you adapt your techniques to your style. Your style isn't your techniques, okay? It's whatever your end goal is. Like you'll play your way regardless of like, you'll add new techniques into your arsenal. Like even high level guys will do that. You'll encounter situations that will play under different rule sets, i.e. Not even talking about MMA, but like the difference between ADCC and IBJJF, like the rule sets are really differently on there, okay? The rule sets and all that stuff might change. And a high level competitor, or even any competitor will have to do that. But the great competitors find a way to impose their will, their game on the situation they're at, and not vice versa. But again, that's a high level type way of looking at it. And I think that's all I need to say on that one right there. I can think of saying at this point.
I think it's easier for me to distinguish, like when you're saying these things, I definitely different people came up in mind on who's what style, but I think it's difficult for me to figure out where I fall under. How do you determine, and also where do you think you fall under in terms of those categories?
Where do I fall under those categories? Well, I can definitely tell you mine. Like I'm a bit more old school. So like, again, it's the way I came up. Like I like the game that's applicable in many different situations. So I've always said gi and no gi doesn't really throw me off that much. I've been training both for a long time. And I've always thought that was important. Also, you know, obviously I haven't fought MMA, like, you know, I don't like talking about street fights and stuff like that. But if somebody was to start swinging at me, it doesn't really throw me off either. Like partially because of my training, but partially because of my style. It's like I'm always, you know, like I always like to tell people, like, it's not that I don't trust you. I just don't trust certain situations. Like I'm always kind of wary about that. So, yeah, I tend to kind of put myself a bit more on the first kind of old school game, with some tendencies to be able to kind of move back and forth between things. Like there's no like one pure style, just like in terms of guard passing. It's like I describe guard passing as basically I can categorize into movement or pressure, but a lot of your guard passes you're going to do both things on. So like it's not like I'm going to hard categorize it. And then I also know like my body type, my ability to put pressure on. I know my ability to unbalance folks. I think I fall somewhere in the center between being aggressive or counter. Yeah, that's where I would categorize my game right there. I would look at your game, Sean. is being a little bit more, not saying that you couldn't fight if you didn't want to fight or your game isn't old school or anything like that. But I look at you as a guy that with your athleticism and like, you know, the fact you've been doing this since you were young, I'm not saying you're a sport only guy, but I see you as a guy that plays your options a lot. That it's not necessarily that one move is spectacularly or one thing. It's like, I can't stop this if I see it's coming. Like, I've never had that fear against your game. It's also like, well, I can get to that point where if I'm defending against this one thing, and then Sean can switch to something else really rapidly. And I think your game works a little bit better when you're a little bit more aggressive because of that, as opposed to passive, i.e. you need to be the one that's making your opponent react to you. So sometimes when I've coached you, for example, it's like trying to get you in that mindset of aggression without too much aggression on that. Like, you know, it's like you need to be going ahead and having your confidence and building up and moving after folks, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for something to happen. If you sit back, wait for something to happen, I'm not saying you don't have the defense to get out of it a lot of times, but it does throw your game off. You think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah. Actually, as you're saying all that, like my first match with Erico, I definitely was not more aggressive. I was more defensive, and I felt a little stuck on what I should be doing. But on the previous matches, the more recent ones before I got injured, I was more aggressive. I was kind of leading everything, and I performed a lot better. So I agree.
And Erico was your first black belt match too, wasn't it? Yeah. So like I mean, for those of you who don't know or don't realize this, like every time you go up a belt ranking, it's well deserved, of course, but there's also this feeling like, oh my God, do I deserve this? And everybody's going to kill me. So like everybody goes through that at every belt ranking. It doesn't get any better. I will tell you, it gets worse at black belt. Like I'll say when we get to black belt, it's like, oh my God, like, you know, now I got this thing. And I'm dealing with guys, you know, I'm an old fart at this point, and I've had matches against guys that have been black belts as long as I've been training for. I've been training for 26 years. So, but like I said, it gets better, like, you know, and it's this confidence thing and this ability to like constantly get better.
I think this is good for me as a coach to like look at my students and kind of see where they fall under and how I can help them improve as well. So this is really, really good stuff. Thank you.
And like I said, initially, I mean, I've refined this over the years based on what's going on. I've refined this based on like coaching, obviously, for the last 10 years. But I did this initially as a matchmaker. I would look, you know, if you have two guys that are passive, for example, or counterattackers, if you set up a match between those two, it's going to be a really boring ass match. Like they'll just circle around each other. Or even two guys are too worried about like the whole Valley Tudo situation where it's like, oh, this would work in a street fight, or like, I'm not going to take any risks. That turns out to be a boring match as well a lot of times. So there's other things on it too, but the simplest things that I can go is like, those are the main factors that I look at. Oh, we killed some time here. Does anybody else have any questions or anything like that?
How about so like during like open mat, you know, after we drill, we do open mats, or we just, you know, we're rolling around. Should there be a certain intensity that we roll at? Like there's certain guys, of course, that you know they're gonna go 100%. So you're gonna go 100% with them, and then there's certain guys you're just kind of nonchalant. But as an individual, it's probably different. But should we, since we're still, you know, at least me, a white belt, still beginning, like, should we have a certain mindset to like, you know, I don't want to, whether you're competing or not, I know, you know, yeah, I just kind of curious about the intensity of your rolls. How should we be rolling? Is it, you know, should you train one way, go hard? Everybody's saying, well, if you roll really relaxed, and that's the way you're gonna, you know, that's the way you're gonna always be. Or if you go 100%, but then some people don't go 100% with you. What's your take on like the intensity during like open mats and rolling?
You know, first of all, my intention is to always get better. So a roll that I don't learn anything from, that I don't take something away from, that doesn't improve, at least improve me, or now as a coach that improves them in some way. I'm always looking with that mindset. And to be honest, like the idea, I'm just going to kind of come in and roll around, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong, but like if I don't have the mindset that it's going to improve me and my partner, my opponent, then to me it's a bit of a waste of time. Like, you know, like even after all these years, it's the one that I have the least amount of patience for, to be honest with you. But if you come in with that mindset, like, okay, this role, this open mat, this is here to improve myself and improve my opponent in some way. Although it's my responsibility really just to improve myself on that. Like, or for anybody at this level right now. As a coach, it's a little bit different, but I'll say right now, it's like, if I have the mindset to improve myself, okay, and get better off of this, then my partners / opponents / teammates / whoever I'm rolling with at that point can't help but get better at that point too. Like, you know, we both have that kind of common goal. So that's what I look at right there. Then the thing I'll look at right there is, okay, what specifically getting better, like that's kind of a vague term. It's like, what am I trying to get better at right here? What is my goal on this match right here, or when I'm rolling on this? Sometimes it's, okay, like I have a specific problem, a specific issue. Well, let me take things a couple of steps back. So I have to kind of look and evaluate who I'm going against right now and what I'm trying to do. And again, there's 3 levels of people that you go against: somebody below your level, somebody at your level, and somebody above your level. Okay, and you have to be honest with yourself and recognize where you're at right now. Okay, somebody that's above my level, you should still try your best to get them to do what you can right there. And sometimes we'll legitimately catch them and do stuff. Like, you know, the higher level guys aren't invincible for certain. Okay, but take it as a learning experience right there. Like, you know, like realize that, especially the way we built up the culture at the gym, those folks are there. They're trying to get something out of it too, but like, you know, they tend to match your intensity. Like, I think you've noticed, like virtually all the high level folks will do that right there. So you can go ahead, try out stuff, work on things, and they'll let you know really quickly whether what you did was legit or not, or like, you know, was helpful or not, and then ask questions out of that. And then working with somebody below your level, and they're like, unless you're brand new in the gym, I'm certain there's always somebody below your level at the gym, has less experience, whatever. Again, depends on what you're trying to do with that. Like, sometimes you need that below level person to go ahead and it's like, okay, like this is my opportunity. Like, I know what my A game is right there, and I know what I can do every single time. Sometimes like, okay, I'm going to work on my B level game right now. It's like, I'm going to try different stuff at this point. And like, whether it works or not that big of a deal, but this is how I get better. This is how I get my reps in. This is how I get confidence on it. Quite frankly, sometimes you need that lower level person as, for lack of a better words, a slump buster. It's like, all right, you're coming after me with intensity. You're not quite sure it's right now. I need to like be able to pull these moves off over and over against you. Just know that they work, or just kind of build up some level of confidence on this one right there. You can't have the hard battle every single time. John Donaher had an interesting quote, although I haven't listened to the interview, that 70% of your training should be against people that are lower than your level. Okay, specifically because, well, I haven't listened to the interview, but I think the reasoning was so you have a chance to work on these particular moves. Okay, and then when I'm working at somebody that's at my level, somebody that's so-called my arch rival, or you know, not always your toughest battles are going to be in competition. Sometimes your toughest battles are like at the gym, working against somebody who's like, man, like, you know, I've been going with this person day in, day out, and here's all the training. Like, you know, maybe you don't like ever compete in a competition setting, but here's my chance to test this out. Here's my chance to see what's working and what's not working against somebody that's probably staying up at night thinking about me. Okay. In that sense, you go ahead, you put everything you have into it. You know, it puts you in different mindsets. So instead of just thinking about technique, it's how to deal with adversity in different situations, dealing against a thinking opponent, stuff like that. But it is testing out the technique, don't get me wrong, but there's other stuff that's tested on that point too. You know, one of the things like with open mat type training and stuff like that, that I started doing with the fundamentals, and like I haven't run the fundamentals in a minute, but I really like no time limit training, that you just have a set goal right there. It's like, okay, shake hands, and we're just going to go until somebody taps. As a matter of fact, like I probably didn't train with a timer for the first 10 years that I trained, believe it or not. Like, it was just like, you know, guard passing drill is an example of it. Like, sweep, submit, you stay, pass, you stay. If you lose, you go out. But like that match can go on for 30 minutes. Okay. So it makes you dig down, makes you figure out things, makes you kind of push yourself from that point. Like, you know, one of the things about like going against somebody at your level is like finding out where your limits are, or anything with jiu-jitsu right there, is finding out what your limit is and extending that limit out a little bit much within reason. So I like that training. I still like that training a lot. It's just harder to get that in, but like I'm a big fan of the, like, turn off the clock on open mat training. If you're going to spar. No looking at the clock, you know, no looking for somebody to bail you out. It's just you and yourself out there and figuring it out. And figuring it out against like a thinking, breathing, feeling person that's trying to do the same thing back at you. Like, you know, in my view, actually, there's no pure form of expression of jiu-jitsu than that sparring session with somebody just at your level, and you turn the clock off and we're just going to go until somebody taps. And the next day we'll do the same thing. It's not like a big depressive thing if you lose, and it's not a big high if you win. It's just another day of training after all of it.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
Hey Gumby, I got a question.
Shoot.
How's it going, man? It's good to talk to all you guys. See you guys here. I've seen a lot of you in a long time. Ernie, by the way, back.
What's up, Ernie? Now
I don't know if you know. Yeah, I don't know if you know a lot of Ernie's, but yeah, I think like I've been coming up against this weird kind of. I'm trying to figure out which philosophy to adopt at my stage, which is whether or not I should be diversifying my sort of like jiu-jitsu flow chart, or just focusing in on like 2 or 3 like things I want to get good at. And I forget who it was. It might have been like Hodger Gracie, who was saying, you know, you don't need to be good at 1,000 things. You just need to be really good at like 10 things or like 5 things. I can't remember, but should I be diversifying, like exploring every single thing I possibly can, or just getting hella good at the things that, you know, or my strengths are?
So, at your stage in the game, like, this is the way that I see it, like within terms of learning and the progression and the lifespan of jiu-jitsu and the rankings and stuff like that. But I'll say you got your blue belt for doing what you're good at. You'll get your purple belt for getting good at what you're bad at. So there is need to be well-rounded. Like, there's still, like, believe it or not, a lot of things to explore and learn, and just situationally, like, you know, you have to be kind of prepared for all different situations. So that's the big test right there. It's like, am I like, can I handle being on the bottom? Can I handle being on a half guard? Can I handle being in like some of those basic positions? And then building up a level of confidence and expertise, if not, on those things right there. So like, in my opinion, if you saw like a glaring weakness in your game, then it doesn't make sense to go ahead and keep work to diversify something that you're stronger at. When I say glaring weakness, it's like out of the basic position on that, out of the basic game on that. So like I would say round that out. Like, that's why, like, for a lot of folks, the biggest jump, the hardest jump in jiu-jitsu, in most instructors' opinion, is the jump between blue and purple. Because yeah, and Half was really honest about that, especially back in the day. Like, there was guys that would win every single tournament with one match, with one move, and Half would not promote them, you know, until they like diversified their game, or until they rounded out their game. That's a little bit different than diversifying your game, if that makes sense. But once you get that kind of level of comfort and expertise, like once you basically like, okay, I speak the language, I know the fundamental stuff, which bluntly takes time. You know, however many years it takes the average person to get to a purple belt, figure out it's about that much time on that. But once you get to that point, then you're going to find that diversifying your game like will make a lot more sense. So like, okay, I have this, and this. Now what do I do with it? You know, this worked really well for me. Like, you know, maybe I can go back and exploring my strengths or those different spots right there. So that's the general progression and how I see it with folks. So that's my generic answer on that right there. My specific answer is, again, go back, try to work on what you're not strong at. Okay, feel like you're strong at all positions first before I would go ahead and diversify that. Like, and that's gonna be my final answer on that.
Nice, thanks, man.
Yeah. Anybody? Anything else?
Hey, Gumby. On the on the mental side of things, you know, what do you recommend for taking the gym confidence into tournaments? I know, you know, experience is always the key thing, but, you know, how do you, you know, keep that mindset when going from the gym into?
And that's one that I personally have some issues with, because I'm a slow starter in competitions, and sometimes, a lot of times, to my detriment, actually. But personally, I've always found that I'll do better in the tournaments that I work. How do I put this? That I worked harder on, that I felt I had something to lose with, that I had a bit of nerves on there, right there. Like, you know, the person that walks into a tournament like without any nerves, like or feeling overconfident, you know, they might have that ability to go out that way, but like when they run into adversity, then they will run into trouble right there. My first thing is, it's like, again, it's not that I don't trust my opponent or the tournament. I just don't trust certain situations. Like, you know, like I always have this mentality when I go into a tournament. It's like, you know what, this could be my last one. And not just because of my age at this point too, but I always have that mentality. It's like, you can take an injury, have somebody that's coming hard after you. Like, you know, there's a level of risk involved with this. I'm willing to take it, but the risk factor isn't zero on this. Like, I have to take this seriously. I have to put myself a little bit on the edge on that. You know, I worked really hard when I got in there, like, you know, in terms of like the weight cut and the training that I did and whatever sacrifice I put into that. I have something to lose on this. Like, you know, like I have a lot to gain on this, but I have something to lose on that. And I need to protect that. So for me, that mentality that I have to protect that, I have to protect myself, definitely helps me out when I get out there. Like, you know, anytime that I've come in with that mentality, look out. Like, anytime that I came in, it's like, I'm happy to be here. Like, I don't have that same fire about me. That's when I've done not as well in the competition. So that would be my initial advice on that. Like I said, that one's a little bit harder for me right there to explain. Like, when I was fighting for, you know, one of the big things, like early on in my career, like, you know, pre-black belt. So basically, like, I never competed at brown belt, believe it or not. Like, I was brown belt for such a short period of time relative to the typical half promotion scale right there. But any competition that I had with half in my corner, I was pretty much unbeatable. And the main thing was, I was so scared of half. He'd be in the background threatening to kill me if I did something wrong, that like there was no way like I was gonna be like I was going to take myself out of that situation. And I found over the years, like, I obviously can't have half in my corner every single time, like, or have that whole fear mentality of who's behind me on that. But like I said, like that need to kind of protect something, or protect my name or reputation or my health. That idea that I have something to lose on there. But I have to, that makes me take it seriously, and not just in the moment in that day right there, but it's like, you know, even to this day, it's like, I don't really have to cut weight to enter. When I do now, actually, I don't have to quit alcohol for the month before I compete, which I've always done. But that mentality is like, I really wanted this beer, but screw it. Like, I'd rather win this match more. So like, I knew I suffered to get to this point. And I do think that's an important part about the competition journey right there, is like, I was willing to sacrifice. And I was willing to make a real sacrifice in this. Or like, you know, even alcohol isn't that big of a deal for me to give up. Some of you might remember I'll give up Pearl teas, which I used to love. And I would give up those in the duration of training. And I'm like, I'm going to kill you because I didn't have any bubble teas for this. So that, like I said, it's something that I struggle with myself quite a bit though. So hope that helps.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Anything else? Got anything?
I got one more if no one else has one.
Shoot.
Jiu-jitsu people are always joking about how our cardio is shit. Everybody, and there's just like a million memes about my cardio is shit. I had somebody recently who does Muay Thai tell me like, oh dude, there's no substitute for jogging. Like, you're never going to get away from jogging. And I don't know if you've seen a correlation between those who jog doing better in jiu-jitsu or not, at least just in terms of their conditioning, because I don't want to start, but if I have to, I will.
Yeah. I mean, Yeah, I can give you every meme or excuse or line in the book about, like, you know, the inherent laziness of jiu-jitsu athletes, some jiu-jitsu athletes. Like, I had a friend that was a really high level, like, Olympic trials wrestler. Is like, man, like, name me another art you can fight on your back. That's the laziest thing I've ever heard of. Like, you know, obviously physical attributes, your strength, your speed, your flexibility, your size, your cardio will definitely all help in your jiu-jitsu. Like, you know, anybody that's telling you like, oh, those things don't matter is straight up marketing at best and lying to you at worst, obviously, right? I mean, everybody knows what I'm talking about. It says like size actually matters, strength actually matters, cardio actually matters. I will say though, like with the level of technique and like experience I have, like I can come in there some days and like against somebody that I know that I'm a higher level than, I can disguise my cardio really well. I might have terrible cardio on a day or a period or not feel it, but like you're not going to know it by the way I roll. You roll. Certain people roll with me. Then if I go against somebody closer to my level or a high level right there, then my cardio flaws are going to be exposed if I'm not careful on that. So yeah, like jiu-jitsu guys always joke about it, but it's a myth. Like you need the cardio, you need all those type of things. But to answer specifically your question, I never actually found or thought that jogging for a cardio workout was all that useful to jiu-jitsu. And the reason for it is most of what I know about jogging, and like I actually used to run track, although I don't like running that much anymore because of my knees and various other issues. Jogging puts you in this kind of steady state in this rhythm. It's like you're jogging and it's about kind of keeping the same pace, the same beat for the majority of the jog. Jiu-jitsu doesn't work like that. Jiu-jitsu has these periods of low intensity to high intensity. Half always used to say, it's not about your top speed, it's about your acceleration. It's about your 0 to 60 time and your ability to go ahead and go back to 0 again in that. So I mean, I do things like I started actually personally hitting the row machine after workouts now. I think that's a good one. That's a full body workout that's really helpful, among other things right there. But when I'm in competition mode, and I was really doing it when I was more into competing and stuff like that. Rather than jogging, I like straights and curves. So what a straight and curve is, like I would go to the track and I don't run the steady state around the entire track. I would sprint as hard as I could down the straights, and I would jog or walk more likely, I'll be honest with you, along the curves. Or I would do sprints on soccer fields a lot of times. So I'd find a soccer field, plenty around here, and they were easier on my knees. So I actually like doing that a little bit more towards the end. I would sprint as hard as I can, try to get the best time I could to one side, and then I would kind of walk back to the other side right there, kind of get my energy back, and then I would sprint as hard as I could, and I could walk back. Because in my mind, that type of training, that type of cardio, that type of movement is way more indicative of how jiu-jitsu actually works.
Nice, thanks.
Sure. Well, tell you what, folks, if anybody has any more individual questions, I'm happy to schedule like individual Zooms during the time off to talk to folks. And I'll put Trevor and Eastside up on a schedule as well. Eastside's been slammed because I don't know if you guys know, he works at Safeway as a butcher. So like he's slammed right now. But we'll get that on a schedule. If anybody has any other like, one of the other things too is like videos to shoot. Like I have some ideas for some solo stuff to shoot. So I'm probably going to go down and shoot some of that stuff tomorrow. And I'll put it up on YouTube and I'll share that with everybody. If there's anything that anybody wants to see, like, oh, I have a question on this particular technique or show me this. If you didn't think of it right now, Gumby at heroesmartialarts.com is always one of the easier ways to get to me. Or most of you came here through Facebook, direct message me on Facebook. Although the email tends to work better. Facebook, I have found that sometimes people will message me on that and I've literally had it where people won't, I haven't seen it for months at a time. So Gumby at heroesmartialarts.com is always the safest way to get a hold of me. Yeah, and then I'll try to schedule like, I'll definitely do more of these Zoom type things. I actually have a meeting with somebody from Zoom to see how I can make a better virtual classroom than just sitting around at my desk right now. And then the internet should be up at the new location, or actually the internet should be up at the old location, so I should be able to stream better from there. So I'm working to make better experiences for everybody. But you know, any feedback, if this is helpful or not helpful, or if you have any questions or anything like that, let me know. Good sounds cool. All right, just keep following along. I'll send out the newsletters, and thanks everybody for showing up. I'll talk to you all real soon.
Thanks, Gumby.
Thanks, Gumby.
Bye.
Just get back on the mat soon. Anybody want a phone roll?
Thanks, Gumby. It's nice to talk to all you guys again.
Yeah, good hearing from you.
Dope. I have a new gear I can't even use right now. I have bought it for the competition. So it's sitting in my room. All right, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Later.
Okay, here, kind. No, talk to you guys. Did you leave?